very, very pleased to be here to introduce to you a very small portion, a drop of the ocean of the music in all dimensions. Of course, it's impossible to do right with 45 minutes to introduce over 2,000 years of music and culture or beyond. So what we're going to do is just quickly review the structure, a little bit differences between the classical Western and classical Eastern, especially Persian music. I had in mind to go first, let me have the first slide please, to go first to give you some idea of basics of at least minimum information we need to have to understand what the sound is and what's hearing all about. We might still do that quickly though. The sound is really a vibration in the air. The molecules of air do not travel. We do not know how it happens. It's an energy that starts from somewhere up here, comes either to your vocal cord or to your motor extremities. Somehow this energy transfers to mechanic transfers to the air, it travels somehow to the air. It's not linear, unlike we write it up here as a wave. It's actually spheric. It's boom, goes all the way all around us. As a matter of fact, the first sound of the Big Bang still is around, and they can observe it. In the old days that we had the old TVs, those black and white, I don't know if you guys are old enough to even remember that, sound that would come is the background of the Big Bang in the space, that we are still getting it from many, many billion years ago. Having that in mind, at least you need to know the frequency is one of the basic characteristics of sound. Frequency is how many cycles we are moving this, we are disturbing this media, whatever it is, in our case being air. And that's very important because that creates different feeling, what we call pitch. The higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. For example, here is much higher than this one. So, that one was higher than this one. These are difference in pitch. You can make the difference in how strong the sound is. Like if I'm talking loud or very soft, that would be the loudness, that's the amplitude, and then how long the sound remains on the air. Can we go to the next slide, please, quick? Which one that is? You can bypass this one. I already talked about this because of the time, since we have a time limit now. Let's bypass this one also. This was just showing the molecules. Now, this is the wave for a sound that is low amplitude and low frequency. Next slide, please. This one is, of course, higher amplitude and also more cycles for the same unit of time, which is usually the hertz, which is how many frequency pitches second we have. Next one, please. Now, playing one sound would not create any musical understanding or feeling. It just gives you a rhythm, like same sound with different duration, with different shape and amplitude, would not give you any pleasurable feeling. Interestingly, people believe that music was before language, which was in the nature and all around the human as we were 10,000 years ago, starting to evolve to what we are today gradually. And at that sense, we are trying to probably imitate the sounds that are around us to begin with. We are talking about 10,000 years ago. And with that, music and rhythm comes first, naturally. That's why they were thinking it was before. But it's very interesting that both music and language are very, very, very cultural dependent and local dependent. And that is when you're born, the hardware is there, there's no software, but you need to reprogram this to get the code of the sounds you're hearing. And in the first 2 years, you're all hearing, all the babies are just listening, and then they start practicing with the words, and then just making this vocal cord move the air make a sensible. But you need to have the coding, and then when you hear that again, then it's decoded and gives you the meaning that you already put together in your brain. That's a very complex scenario there. The language is exactly like music. For example, اگه من الان به شما بگم خیلی خوش آمدید، خیلی خوشحالم که اینجا هستم, probably none of you understand what I said. I'm using the same technique to transfer the sound to you. But because the coding and decoding is not there, you might enjoy or disenjoy what you just heard, but you would not get any feeling or message out of it. Music is pretty much like that. Although it's an international language in one sense, very much like language is very local. And if you're not tuned to it and get the code in place, when you hear it again, you cannot decode it as well as a native. And that's why, since Western, from probably 16th century, 15th century, the Western classical music started developing to the today, what it is today. Beautiful. But if you're tuned to all those intervals that you constantly hear, and especially if you're very sensitive and your intonation is to perfect pitch, when you hear a foreign piece and if they are not using that perfect pitch scale, then it might look nice to you or not nice, but it does not sit down as a message or as a feeling as a native would. Absolutely. And that's why I'm here today, to show you what other scales we use that is outside of what you're used to. So some part of this tunes that you're hearing is totally out of tune for you, because your ear since childhood has grown into perfect pitch, and something that's outside it, it's a little bit different. Having said that, being performed in many different stages, the feedback that I get is that it's nice. At least they don't come and say, I'm going to run away from this. That's very interesting, but it could happen, you know, you have to be careful with it. Next slide will tell you how the sound we talked about travel to the ear, and I want you to see how complex is this. Go please, the next one. Vocal cords move, a thought comes, an energy, and this is all transfer of energy from one thought to another thought. And this transfer is very, very complex and beautiful, beautiful in nature. Suppose that your vocal cord is moving the air and it comes to your ear. Where does it happen next, please? That's okay, we can, yes. It goes through the ear canal. The wave and energy of wave turns to mechanic again. It moves the membrane, 3 little bones in the middle ear, moves to another membrane inside what's called the cochlea, which is a foiled piece of engineering. If you open that up, next slide please, you would see, like the key of the piano, there is a membrane called basal membrane in that coil that is sensitive to the different frequencies, the higher frequency at the door, and as you go in and in and in, the lower frequencies. So this is like you have this device in your ear, and when the fluid inside this coil starts vibrating, it vibrates different part of this, and then, next slide please. If you cut that, see what's happening in there. That's the basal membrane right there, and the cells are sitting there. There are some projections of the cells out, and if the membrane moves, they get stimulated, and the message goes as a neural input with electrical charge and chemical bonds and bridges, and distributes all over the brain, and that's what we call. We understand this energy transferred somehow to you, and now it translated to your energy. Hopefully, when I say red, which you hear and you imagine is really the same red that I'm referring to. That's a very special dialogue, is what we call, is it the same? Is the listener really on the same page that I am. And that needs to be all in the childhood that you come up. It needs to be coded so you can decode it. If you don't have that code, it's not going to decode it. Next, please. Okay, so what we hear, the range of human hearing, the whole electromagnetic range from 0. Could you go to the next slide first? Then I get back to this. From 0 all the way to gamma rays. It starts to the range that we can. First of all, this range is from 5 to 15. It's vibration that you feel. From 20 to 20,000, this device picks it up. Then there is a gap from there. We cannot communicate with whatever is out there because we don't have the device. Until it gets to 10 to the power of 12, which is called terahertz, and in that 450 to 750 is the visible, which this device picks it up. They all transfers to electrochemical messages and goes all over the brain, and then the brain sitting up there with these 3 small pieces of whatever is out there projects and guesses what is really going out there. And this is what we constantly are getting these inputs, and the brain guess and puts best guess out, projects out there. That's very interesting. But the amount of the visible or audible or touchable bound is very, very limited. And so therefore we don't really know what's outside us. What is we believe that is outside us is what this creates based on what the information it gets, which is very limited. Next, please. Now, there is 8 notes in musical scales of the Western culture. In the Europe, they call it do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. Here you start with A, B, C, D, but they're equivalent of the same frequencies. Next, please. Now I need your imagination. Instead of reading the notes on the paper in 2D, we are going to create a 3D experience of the scale. Every scale has a special structure that we're going to review, and then you imagine in this room that you're sitting. Next, please. There are 4 notes that are always the same. As soon as you pick number 1, at what frequency is your number 1? In every scale. Number 4, number 5, and number 8 out of the 8 notes are always fixed. You cannot change that. Always fixed. No matter what mode you're playing, no matter what scale you're playing, those 4 is like columns that hold the room up. So I want you to imagine 1 is behind you right in that corner, 4, 5, and 8 is there. So this 4 is already fixed. There's 2 more notes, depends on where you choose it on that wall, and 2 more notes where you choose it in this wall, that gives you the different color of different modes and different things that you hear and play. The whole music is like that. But remember, as soon as you fix the first frequency on that note, 4th, 5th, and 8th, which are the most important notes of the scale, all the chords that you hear and develop is all based on 4th, 5th, and 8th. And we'll go a little bit farther than that and I'll show you. Now, interestingly, if you divide this wall to 4 equal parts and take one of these parts and measure the other 2 walls, there is 10 in that wall, 10 in this wall, in every scale. Next, please. So you have a 24-part scale. 4 notes is already picked. You have 9 possibilities to put notes in this wall, 9 possibilities in that wall. And depends on where you put them, you get different scales. And from now on, I'm going to give you a phone number to these scales. So if you need them, you can call them. Next one, please. The first one is called tonic. It's always the most important part in Western classical music. The 4th, 5th are called perfect. They're always fixed in that sense. And the next one is octave. Supposedly, this is 100. Let's pick a just simple one. The frequency of number 1 is 100. That one in that corner, number 4, would be 133. It's always 1.33 relative to the first node. The one on position node number 5